Previously on the Heritage Trail. We ventured into the city of Bath, a rare World Heritage city, in order to discover some of their renowned heritage sites. Initially constructed in 1894, we visited the Roman Baths, a historic site where much of Bath's history relates to. With a fascinating history of destruction and reconstruction, the influence of the goddess Sulis, and elements of early integration at the Roman Bath site following invasion from the Romans, the Roman Baths provided a clearer picture as to the context and history of some of our British heritage. Do you think, in terms of the future and in terms of, I was saying earlier, in certain cities and countries they have glazing over the floor, is there a particular team that's very focused on preserving this heritage, or is it just as over time, you see what happens with it?
Yeah, I mean, we do have a conservation team, obviously making sure that if there's any damaging parts of the whole site, for example, if any bits of the slabs of stone or anything off the flooring ends up becoming loose or anything, we do have a team to obviously put that back and repair that the best they can.
Being so close to it is something that's very memorable. Of course, the very special characteristic of the Roman baths, unlike lots of other Roman baths, say, or other ancient monuments, is that it does have hot water flowing through it. It's a unique aspect, but it's something that also brings its own conservation issues. We read about how in the Roman Empire they were excellent architects, good builders, all this sort of thing. They very rarely put a damp-proof course into a building. So one of the consequences of that is that in carrying out conservation work, we actually have to deal sometimes with the deficiencies of the original builders. Of course, today you would put a damp-proof course in and you wouldn't have problems with rising damp or salt and so on.
Okay, so how did you find the Roman baths and your experience when you walked in?
I've seen quite a few pictures of the baths, I've seen people visiting. It's a completely different experience actually coming. And we often say that when you visit places, but today I walked down steps to the lower terrace and I literally gasped. That it was so beautiful, and I felt like I was treading back in time, that the Romans were here, this is what they built, their engineering intelligence was inspiring. And to relive what they had created 2,000 years ago with the lead pipes and the mechanisms, I think it's something that there's so much in today's generations we can learn from, and it's an honour for us to be able to live through that. So.
I couldn't actually believe they let us walk on the floor that's 2,000 years old, because a lot of heritage sites you go to, and they said that is very rare and distinct for their site, is that it's all normally cordoned off, you can't really access it, like it's not open for the public, or you have to have special access, and that is also the case in many of the Middle Eastern countries as well, where we have our heritage. But it was quite fascinating, the fact that it was literally there. It wasn't glazed over like in Safa al-Marwa in Mecca. It was just there for you to step on and for you to admire and see the lead pipe from the Romans, and it was so alive. It was so connecting to a history that a lot of people find their identity in, and I think seeing that is admirable. I mean, it's something that I felt was very inspiring. Bath Abbey is one of the most visited places in the southwest of England. It welcomes an overwhelming 420,000 people through its doors each year, while some of their many visitors come to simply admire the magnificent architecture, and some for moments of quiet contemplation or worship, or perhaps immersion into some of the wonderful community projects. The Abbey recognises the variety of its visitors and the need to cater for all. We're now going to go to Bath Abbey, which is a revered heritage site and belongs to the Christians. In this city, we're going to actually go and interview Charles Curnock, who works for Bath Abbey, and will give us more insight as to what the heritage of this particular site is. I'm really excited to go, so we're going to go in there now. Hi, nice to meet you.
Hello.
I'm Sarah, I'm from SafeerTV.
Hello.
And this is Zara.
I'm Zara, I'm from Safest and Heritage Campaign.
Hello, hi. I'm Charles. Charles Curnock. I work here. And I mainly spend most of my time looking after the buildings here, particularly this fabulous building here, Bath Abbey.
Well, it's absolutely stunning, and we're here today just to find out a little more about the history of it, the origins of it.
Yes.
In regards to the statues on the outside, I know inside it's absolutely beautiful, but outside there's amazing heritage and architecture as well. Could you shed some insight as to the origins of this building?
Yeah, I find this place fascinating because the west front of the building that we're looking at with all the statues on them were one of the last great churches, medieval churches in Britain before the Reformation. And so they tell the story of Christianity from a Catholic perspective pre the Reformation. I find it strange, in fact, that it survived the Reformation because the church never really got finished for about another 150 years later. It never really got finished properly. And but the church itself is, I just, again, this history and heritage that, as we were talking earlier, this church sits on top of what was a Norman cathedral, which sits on top of an Saxon abbey, which sits on top of a Roman temple. And we know roughly where the Roman temple is, and that, of course, was a pre-Christian place of worship, and there's been, I'm sure, worship here for many thousands of years.
So in terms of when you said the Reformation period, for the sake of our viewers, what
Yes.
period, time period are we looking at?
Around the 1500s. In 1540, and it was happening right across Europe, not just in the UK, but across in Germany and many other countries in Europe. The monasteries were abolished, and the churches were taken over by the state. This church here, from 1540 to 1570, belonged to the local member of Parliament. In 1570, it became the local parish church again, and eventually in 1618, after pressure from Queen Elizabeth I, it was properly finished off, and then has been a big parish church ever since then.
What role does this church play in terms of the current community of Bath or the locals? How significant is it to the people living here as a heritage place?
I think it's very significant. The church has 3 or 4 different roles. I'll try and work them out. Firstly, it's a place of worship, a place of Christian worship, and that's for the regular congregation each Sunday of 500 or 600 people, several services during the day. And then it's a place of civic worship. There are a lot of civic ceremonies happen here, civic services happen here. Secondly, it's used for a lot of other civic events. Graduation ceremonies from universities happen here. The mayor making, a lot of other things of that sort of nature. And then on from there, of course, we have a lot of concerts. The place is a major visitor attraction, and we love having visitors here. And we're doing a lot more education and training. We're planning quite a lot of building work soon, and so for that we'll have a lot of apprentices working here, working with the builders again, using the place. And it's great fun having kids in here doing model making, doing stone carving, doing drawing, using the place, using the beauty of the place as a catalyst for their art.
Working on a project like that specifically, and even some of the work that we've kind of done to preserve heritage or work for campaigning for the preservation of heritage, it really gives you this idea that heritage is a universal, it's a universal belonging. It is a
universal thing, yes, absolutely.
And how does this? I mean, you've worked with obviously the Middle East and a group from the Middle East, and you also work here.
Yes.
How does that increase the emphasis on this right of heritage that belongs to everybody, and not just, it's not just a religious institute, but it is something that belongs to everyone?
And one of the things we're trying to do a lot more now is to provide more material to enable people to understand the heritage, to understand, to interpret what it's about, understand the iconography, understand the history behind it. And that's something which we're passionate about. And as part of the development project that I'm looking at, is we're spending a lot more effort just on that. And then specifically on education facilities, providing education facilities for children's groups, whether it's history education or religious education or language or mathematics or engineering type stuff. There's a lot of facilities here. We do quite a lot of stuff with the universities here. I was at the university yesterday with a team from the physics department who are doing research for us, looking at we're planning to get energy from the hot spring water here, which is Bath's unique hot spring water, to put in a district heating scheme to heat this place and other buildings around here. And the universities are helping us with that. That's great fun, getting students to have real projects which have got real relevance. And
do you have groups visiting from different faiths? I mean, do you have quite good relations?
Yes, we do. Yes, certainly mainly different brands of Christianity, but yes.
It's a brilliant place for, I think, intra-faith and interfaith. I mean, places like this really unite people on this idea of heritage, which is why we were saying that it's a universal principle. And I think you see that when you see the diversity of people, you know, coming in and visiting the Abbey itself, and participating in the culture of it. So it's really amazing.
What's effective, or even listening to you, is how you're passing on your own knowledge. Like you're saying, you've worked here for 10 years as previously as an engineer, and to pass your knowledge on to the younger generation, which won't appreciate at this age. You know, they'll only grow older and to realise what you have here, and you need people to be educating the future generations. And I think by the fact that the building's standing here, and then you've got the working knowledge, is how it's going to pass on to generation, and why it's so important to preserve it.
One thing I'm quite intrigued about is you mentioned a development project, and you said that there's a difficulty in deciding what to maintain and what to preserve and what to allow to kind of deteriorate, and that must be very challenging for you.
It's challenging and exciting, yes. I'm doing it the whole time. We have this project. It's a nearly £20 million project to do work within the Abbey. The basic structure's fine. There are problems with the floor and the lighting and heating and things, and also we need more space outside to make the place work more effectively. And it's difficult because, again, conserving the heritage means going down underground and through into other buildings. And that project is working now. We have a large lottery grant to fund that. But as I say, a key thing in that is exactly what you were saying, is what do you conserve, what do you keep for the future, and what do you actually move on and change to make the place work for future generations. This project we're doing now is for the next 200 or 300 years, seriously, making the place future-proof. However many people worship in 50 and 100 years' time, this place is going to be here. It's going to be form different functions.
Not only are you looking towards preserving it, it's the sustainability of it, and it's the importance of sustaining it. And I think just that vital principle is something that is exactly why we are here today. And I mean, I think it's amazing. It's truly an amazing effort from the people involved with that project to maintain such sites. I mean, they're stunning and they have so much to them. Bath Abbey is mostly made from Bath stone, a local limestone that is soft stone and easy for masons to work. By the middle of the 20th century, the stone on the outside of Bath Abbey needed to be repaired. The stone on the highest parts of the building had been worn down by years of wind and rain. In the lower and more sheltered parts, the stone was dirty because of pollution in the air from coal fires. This had also caused some of the stonework to be covered with a hard, encrusted substance almost an inch or 2.5 centimetres thick. We're now standing in Bath Abbey, which is located right next to the Roman baths. This place, however, is a Christian site. It's a place of worship. It's also a community centre filled with rich heritage and culture. We're going to take a look at some of the main sites within this church, which predominantly attract tourists and bring them here to find out more about the history of this place. We find that we have a lot of people buried here. More than 8,000 people are buried beneath the floor. We find conservation projects which are aimed towards preserving the heritage here, and we find also people who are working on a sustainable project for 200 to 300 years into the future to ensure that this place remains a heritage site for people to come in the future. So now we're going to discuss with Charles in regards to some of the main sites within this building. So could you tell us a little more about the memorials on the walls here and the origination heritage of that?
Yes. The church having been built in 1480 wasn't really finished off because of the Reformation until the early 1600s. And from the early 1600s right the way through to the mid 1800s, there were lots of people who came here. They came to Bath because of the hot spring water to get the cure. When the cure failed, sadly they ended up under the floor here. But this was a graveyard, it was a place for burials. That hadn't carried on right up until the 1840s. And in that period, between 1618 and 1840, just about 8,500 people had direct records of 8,500 people being buried under the floor, which is not a problem, except that when people are buried, there's air around the bodies. And after a little while, the floor starts to collapse onto them. The Victorians tried to solve the problem, didn't do a really good job, so part of our plans is to sort that out. The main structure of the building is fine, but the floor certainly isn't. It keeps on collapsing. So we're sorting that out. And while we're doing that, we're taking advantage of that, both to conserve the heritage, the history, I'll explain about that, but also to make the place more sustainable by using energy which is available free here from the hot spring water, using that hot spring water energy to heat the place through underfloor heating. And as far as the history is concerned, what our initial thoughts were when we came to lay the floor, we'd use perhaps a few of the old gravestones, ledger stones on the floor, but generally use new stone. But we always thought about it. Actually, wherever we can, we're going to use the old stone, as long as we can make it level and make it work, as long as we get the substrate underneath sorted, that we can use those stones. And again, because it's all part of the history of the heritage. You'll see some people, there's a wall memorial for them on the wall, there's a ledger stone for them on the floor, and when you go down under the floor, you'll find the remains of their graves and things, with the grave plate, there's exactly the same person being memorised in 3 places. And that's sort of curious and sort of, it's interesting. So we do a lot of recording of that.
In terms of the surroundings,
Yes.
I noticed that the glass paintings and the architecture is absolutely stunning. Could you
Yes.
just explain sort of like the history behind the interior of the building? I mean, the lampshades they've caught my eye.
Yes.
It'd be fascinating to know the history of them.
The inside of the building has changed radically since it was finished in 1618. It's hugely. There was for a long time a great screen across the centre of the nave with the organ in it, and so the church services happened that end. But it was before the days of amplification. People can project their voice, but projecting your voice from there down to here, that's quite difficult. So all the church stuff happened there, and the nave here was empty of any seating at all. And it was the place to promenade, to be seen, to come and meet your friends. And occasionally there would be a big event in here. But it was on occasions. So most of the things happened on the other side of the screen at the east end there. Victorian times, that screen was completely removed. The whole place was changed. Balconies were taken down. At that point, this furnishing was put in, and the chandeliers. This is all around the 1860s, 1870. The chandeliers were put in. And again, with the chandeliers, the lights were originally where you can see them now, up around the crown of them, but they've been modified over the years, and so until the year before last, they were rather droopy sort of little lights around them, which produced rather inadequate light. We've now put modern lighting on there. We put LED lights, gone back to the original design intent of the chandeliers, taking the lights back where they originally were. So we use much less energy. They're much lower maintenance, and I think personally that they're much more beautiful than they were, because we've tried to respect the original design of from the 1860s rather than the way they've been modified. So
you were mentioning in regards to the floor, there's
Yes.
there's a sort of disintegration of the stones, and there's a worry that it is going to collapse, like you said.
Yes.
What are the future plans to ensure that this doesn't happen, and how to preserve this sort of the stones
Yeah.
in the
Well,
Abbey?
Grilling as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
What you'll see where we're standing right now, the floor slopes away. Where we're standing on now was I think bodged in the 1960s. We could carry on mending it piecemeal as things fail, but we don't want to do that. And there's a church service going on. That's why people told me. So as the floor has failed, what we're looking to do is to lift the slabs, take out the ground which was turned over by the Victorians, fill the voids below that, methods I can explain to you, so the ground is sustainable, is stable. Put the ledge stones back on, and then mending them where there are chips and breakage and things, to mend them sensitively, which costs no more than new stone, and generally to keep the stone roughly where it is, although the stones aren't necessarily above the original burials.
There's currently a church service going on here in the background here in Bath Abbey, and I'm just hearing some of the words that are being recited, and it's very similar to some of the supplications we recite as Muslims and as Shia Muslims in depicting a relationship with God, and in terms of sincerity, prayer for peace, prayer for death, prayer for sickness. But at the same time, as well as the serenity that you feel in this place, it's a real air of peace and tranquility because of the prayers and the saints that are buried here. As you can see on the floor, there's lots of people buried here from the past who are bishops and priests who had a significant role to play within this place. But right now, standing right behind me, are some of the artwork that this old lady, who's very local to Bath, the city of Bath, has created in honour of Prophet Jesus. And you can see some of the stories that she's taken from the Bible, from the Old Testament, and she's depicted this in a very unique fashion of artwork. So she's used white circles to represent the face of Prophet Isa, instead of actually depicting his face, and instead of showing him, she's shown patterns, she's shown a black circle to represent the crucifixion that Christians believe in, and ultimately the circle becomes a gold circle when it comes to the resurrection of Prophet Isa. So as they've displayed here in Bath Abbey, beginning over there is the very beginning of Prophet Isa's life, and right at the end, as they believe, it's some of the testimonies towards his resurrection and his later life for the Christian belief. So we have passages from the Old Testament and New Testament here, and it's fascinating. It takes you through a journey just by the artwork, which also is a very significant part of heritage. On the nights of Saturday the 25th and Sunday the 26th of April 1942, German aeroplanes bombed the city of Bath. This was part of Hitler's retaliation for Britain's Royal Air Force raids on Germany's historic Baltic ports of Rostock and Lübeck. This terrible weekend was known as the Bath Blitz. The heavy and repeated German air raids killed over 400 people, injured more than 800, and destroyed or seriously damaged over 1,000 buildings in the city. Other cities within the United Kingdom were also attacked, including Exeter, Norwich, York, and Canterbury. How was your experience going to Bath Abbey?
I think when you walk in, you feel the sanctity and the holiness of a place which is worshipped in for God. I was impressed with their internal decor of the chandeliers and how they were preserved, and while we were they'd explained how the Victorians came in and kind of went back to destroy things, and they went pre those eras to go back to the origins. It really impressed me.
I think with Bath Abbey, I think there was a lot to it that previously would come and I hadn't actually known about it, like the plates on the top, and just little things that make the Abbey very distinct. And I loved how, even though it's a heritage site, it's so active in today's community, in today's society. It has such a pivotal role in the city, and you can tell, like in terms of the preservation projects they're doing with Syria. It's just,
that was quite
it's
fascinating,
really
it?
interesting what
and
they're
you
doing.
could feel the pain that we had a group of experts coming from Syria to learn how to develop their tourism world and to preserve their heritage, and to think that Syria in a matter of a couple of years has just gone into turmoil.
It's deteriorated. I think it shows you how important it is to keep up these efforts, because what they're doing is not just in a matter of crisis they're reacting. They're keeping proactive means to ensure the heritage remains. Next week on the Heritage Trail, we visit the Museum of Bath Architecture and visit one of the World Heritage representatives in order to find out more about Bath as a World Heritage City. Join us again next week, only on Sky 847.